They say grief brings people together, but they never warned me how close was too close. I wasn't his real mother. I never tried to be. But after his father passed, it was just the two of us, alone. Quiet, trying to make sense of a home that now echoed with absence. One night changed everything. What started as comfort turned into temptation. What felt innocent became unforgettable. If I could take it back, I would. But that night still haunts me. And what followed, I never saw coming. After my husband passed, the silence in our house became unbearable. It wasn't just grief, it was the way the walls seemed to remember him, while I was left trying to forget just enough to function. Liam, his son from a previous marriage, moved in not long after the funeral. He said it was temporary, just until he figured things out. I didn't argue, I was too numb to say much anyway. At first, we barely talked. He kept to himself, headphones in, gym bag slung over his shoulder, always coming and going. I tried not to hover. I didn't want to be that kind of stepmother, the one who inserts herself where she's not needed. But the truth is, I was lonely. Not just missing my husband, but missing being seen, being part of something. I started cooking more, hoping Liam might stay for dinner. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. When he did, the conversation was light, safe. He'd compliment the food, I'd ask about work, nothing deep. But there were moments, tiny pauses where his eyes lingered too long. Or he'd laugh at something I said a little harder than necessary. I ignored it, or tried to. We were two people grieving differently under the same roof. I convinced myself that was all it was. But late at night, when I'd walk past his door and see the light still on, or catch him watching me from the kitchen doorway when he thought I wasn't looking, a part of me began to wonder. Not about him, but about me. Was I imagining it? Was this just emotional overflow? Or was something quietly shifting between us? I didn't want the answer. But it was already coming. And it wouldn't wait. It started small. A shared laugh over a burned pancake. A moment when his hand brushed mine as we reached for the same plate. Nothing deliberate, nothing wrong, but somehow, I felt it. Liam had a calm energy, quiet, grounded, thoughtful in ways most 20-somethings weren't. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just showed up. He fixed the loose cabinet door without being asked. He brought home groceries when he noticed I was low on coffee. And when I forgot to water the plants, he did it and didn't say a word. One evening, after a long day, I came downstairs in leggings and a tank top, damp hair from the shower. He looked up from the couch. And for a moment, he really looked. Not like a stepson. Not like a boy. His gaze lingered, just long enough to make my stomach tighten, before he glanced away. I told myself it didn't mean anything. He was just surprised, or caught off guard. That's all. But the next day, I caught myself taking longer in front of the mirror. I changed shirts, twice. Not because I wanted him to notice, but because something inside me already knew he would. At dinner, our knees brushed under the table. Neither of us moved. After, he offered to do the dishes. I leaned against the counter, sipping wine, watching him rinse a plate. And when he turned to hand it to me, our hands touched. Not for long. But long enough. His eyes searched mine. I didn't look away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I felt guilty, but because I felt alive. More than I had in years. And that terrified me more than anything else. From that night on, something shifted. Not loudly, not suddenly. But in the quiet moments, the ones no one else would notice. He started coming home earlier. Or maybe I just started noticing when he did. His gym bag would hit the floor, and I'd be in the kitchen, pretending to wipe down a counter I'd already cleaned. We didn't talk about it. Not directly. But the air between us buzzed, like a static charge waiting for skin. One afternoon, I was doing yoga in the living room. He passed by, shirtless, a towel slung over his shoulder. "Didn't know you were this flexible," he joked, half laughing. I smiled, heart thudding too loud in my ears. "Guess I've still got a few surprises left," I replied, not thinking, just reacting. He stopped. Looked at me. Something in his eyes wasn't playful. I changed the subject, fast. Told him dinner would be ready in 20. He nodded, but his gaze lingered a second too long. That night, I found myself picking out a different top. Something soft, slightly lower neckline. Just enough to make me feel visible. We ate, talked, laughed. Too much wine, too many shared glances. When he reached across the table to pour me more, our hands touched again. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. That night, I stood outside his bedroom door. Not to knock. Just to listen. His light was still on. So was mine. Inside me, a war had begun. I wasn't his mother. But I was something. And whatever line existed between us was fading fast. It was a Friday night. The kind where silence feels heavier than sound. Liam had just come back from the gym, towel slung around his neck, shirt clinging to him. I was already in the kitchen, glass of wine in hand. Hair pulled up, a little too aware of how casual I looked. "You're cooking again?" he asked, dropping his bag. "Trying to," I smiled, my voice lighter than it felt. He walked closer, too close, but neither of us moved. The tension was there, like a hum between us, not loud, but impossible to ignore. We ate on the couch, knees grazing, plates balanced on our laps. The movie was just background noise. The real story was happening in the quiet glances. The way his eyes would land on my shoulder, then flick away. The way I noticed, every time. Halfway through, he shifted, his arm brushed mine. I didn't flinch. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, but the pause that followed said everything I couldn't. "I think about you more than I should," he said suddenly. His voice was calm, dangerous. I didn't respond, I couldn't. He leaned forward to grab my empty glass, and our hands touched. But this time, neither of us let go. For one long second, the air between us crackled. My heart pounded so loud, I was sure he could hear it. I whispered, "This is a bad idea." He whispered back, "Then why does it feel so real?" I should have stood up. I should have laughed it off. Instead, I let his fingers rest on mine. We didn't kiss. But we didn't need to. We had already crossed something deeper. That night, I lay awake, clutching my pillow like it could hold back what had started. But I knew nothing would be the same again. The next morning felt heavier. We hadn't touched, not really. But everything had changed. He was already in the kitchen when I came down. Coffee in hand, barefoot, eyes tired. "Morning," he said, too softly. "Morning," I replied, voice thinner than I expected. We moved around each other like strangers, too careful, too aware. Like our bodies remembered something we hadn't fully done. I tried to act normal. Cleaned the counter twice. He offered to run errands, which he never did. I nodded, grateful for the space. But once he left, the house didn't feel calm. It felt watched. There was a subtle shift I couldn't name. Like someone else had been in the room. I glanced at the corner shelf and froze. The old security camera, the one my husband installed years ago, just in case, blinked red. I hadn't thought about it in months. It wasn't even supposed to work anymore. But what if it had? What if it caught us in the kitchen? That look, that touch, that breathless second of almost. I pulled out my phone, opened the app, offline. The relief was instant and short-lived. Because it wasn't the camera I feared. It was myself. How had I let it go this far? What story could I possibly tell if someone asked why my stepson looked at me like that? Later that night, I heard Liam's door open. He paused outside my room, then walked past. No words. Just the sound of restraint, slipping. And I knew. Whatever was coming, we weren't ready for it. It was almost midnight. The kitchen light was the only thing still on in the house. Liam stood barefoot, leaning against the counter, bowl of cereal in hand like nothing was wrong. But everything was. I stepped in quietly. He didn't look up. Not until I said, "We need to talk." His eyes met mine, tired, tense, searching. "I know," he said, "I've been trying not to." There was no point pretending anymore. Not after the night before. Not after the way my hand had stayed in his. "I care about you," he said, barely louder than a breath. "But I don't know where to put that feeling." I swallowed hard. "I care too, maybe too much." He moved closer, just enough that I could feel the heat between us again. "If we take one more step," I whispered, "we don't come back." He closed his eyes. "What if I don't want to come back?" My heart broke a little. "Then I have to be the one who does," I said, "because someone has to remember how wrong this could get." Silence. Heavy. Unfair. "We draw a line," I said. He nodded. "A real one," he echoed. "No more whine. No more lingering. No more wondering what if. Just space." He reached for my hand, gentle, trembling. "I don't regret feeling it," he said. "Me neither," I whispered. "But we can't stay here." He let go first. And that's how it ended. Not with a kiss. But with a choice. Days passed. He stayed out more. I noticed the way the house felt emptier, again. But this time, it was different. Because the silence wasn't about grief. It was about control, restraint. The kind that hurts more than indulgence ever could. We didn't talk much after that night in the kitchen. We kept our distance, careful, calculated. But every now and then, I'd catch his eyes flick to mine. And I'd look away before either of us remembered how it felt. One afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I wasn't getting ready for anything in particular. But I adjusted my top, smoothed my hair. And I saw her, me. A version I'd forgotten. Not because of him, but because of what he stirred inside me. I missed feeling wanted. Not just as a woman. But as someone seen, chosen, alive. I started walking again, reading, saying yes to invitations I'd usually decline. Not because I needed distraction. But because I knew I couldn't let that night define me. It was never about Liam. Not really. It was about what I thought I had lost, and briefly found again in the wrong place. That realization was painful, but it was freeing. One evening, he came home and smiled softly at me. A smile that didn't carry weight. Just warmth. I smiled back. And for the first time in weeks, it felt real. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about what could have happened. What almost did. And I felt something unexpected, peace. We walked to the edge of a line. But we chose not to jump. And even though a part of me still wonders, what if? I'm proud of the part of me that said no. Because sometimes the strongest love is the one you never act on. A week later, I received a message I didn't expect. It was from Liam. Not long. Just a single line. Thank you for knowing when to walk away. I stared at it for a while. Then read it again. There was something heartbreaking in its simplicity. And something healing too. We hadn't spoken since that soft smile in the hallway. No awkward apologies, no false promises. Just space. And silence that, this time, didn't ache. I typed a reply. Deleted it. Typed again. Then settled on. We were never broken, just lost for a while. I didn't know if it made sense. But I hit send anyway. Later that night, I stood by the kitchen window, watching rain smear the glass. This house had seen so many versions of me, wife, widow, almost lover, woman. But now, just me. Whole, flawed. Still learning. I thought of all the boundaries I'd once drawn in my mind. Rules I said I'd never bend. And how easily emotion rewrote them when no one was watching. I'm not proud of every thought I had. But I'm not ashamed either. Because in that moment, on the edge of something forbidden, I remembered who I was. And I stepped back. Not because I didn't feel. But because I did. Deeply. Dangerously. Honestly. And sometimes. That's the kind of love you walk away from. To protect it. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. For staying with me through every pause, every breath I hesitated to take. This story wasn't easy to tell. Not because of the shame, but because of how human it was. We don't always talk about these moments, the ones that don't fit cleanly into right or wrong. The ones that happen in silence, behind closed doors, inside tired hearts. I know what it's like to be the woman who gives and gives. Until she forgets what it feels like to be wanted. To be seen as more than useful. To go months, or years, without a glance that says, you matter. And then one day, someone looks at you differently. Not out of obligation, not out of pity. But like you're alive again. And for a moment, you believe it. You let yourself want something. Even if it scares you. Even if you know you shouldn't. This story wasn't about scandal. It wasn't about a forbidden love. It was about a woman remembering herself. In the worst way, maybe. But remembering, nonetheless. If you've ever stood at the edge of a decision that could change everything, I hope you know you're not weak for feeling. You're not wrong for longing. You're just human. But there's strength in stopping. Power in choosing not to cross a line. Even when no one's watching. So if you're there now, in the quiet, wondering if you're still worthy of desire, of joy, of a life that lights you up, let me say it clearly. You are. And you don't have to lose yourself to feel alive again. Not this time. Not ever. Thank you for holding space for my story. It wasn't perfect, neither was I. But sometimes, sharing the truth, no matter how messy, is the bravest thing we can do. If any part of this resonated with you, if you've ever felt that ache of being overlooked, or the thrill of being seen again, you're not alone. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes, hearing from others helps us understand ourselves a little better. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, raw, real, human, hit the like button, and consider subscribing. Until next time, stay kind to yourself. We're all just doing the best we can.